Hello and welcome to the Generational Leadership Summit. I'm your host, Lloyd Luna from the Philippines. Our guest for this session. For 35 years, Harriet Russell has helped people work better together across cultures with less stress and more mindfulness. From public relations manager at Sony in New York City to a translator and consultant for ABC News at the Tokyo Economic Summit to jetting off to Minsk, Belarus, hosted by the US State Department, Harriet knows the importance of cross-cultural competence in a global world. She runs a cross-cultural training, speaking, and coaching company, working with executives relocating around the world and multicultural teams locally and internationally. She lived overseas for many years and speaks several languages. In 1975, she traveled Marco Polo Silk Route overland for 6 months. Decades later, in her career, of intercultural work, she commended by the Fulbright Commission given an award by Rotary International for creating friendly relations among peoples of the world and founded an English language library in Kyrgyzstan. She is a National Speakers Association member, presenter at GSS 2018, and chapter board member of International Coach Federation, a published author. Her latest book is Business is Overseas, Building Cross-Cultural Relationships That Last. Ladies and gentlemen, in this session, Harriet Russell, representing boomers from the United States. Hello.
Hello, how are you doing, Lloyd and everyone?
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to have you in the summit. I really appreciate your presence, Harriet.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be with you today.
Right. Let's jump in by asking you, how did you take down that road, that path to being consultant and a cross-cultural expert? What's the inspiration like?
What was my inspiration? Yeah. Well, when I was a child, I used to read a book that had one foreign word on each page. For example, here's a family, they live in a casa, house. This is the bedroom in Japan, they sleep on a futon. And I was fascinated at 5 years old, 6 years old, to read foreign languages and learn about other cultures just from a children's book. National Geographic has been one of my favorite magazines throughout all my life. And I almost feel like it's in my DNA to connect with other people across the world, to get to know other cultures, to learn languages. And so the cross-cultural work I've done is really in tune with my authentic self that I've found and worked on for my whole adult career. It started young and it was always just an interest.
Wow, that's interesting. And you started working for people around the world and you never look back. And my question is, you've ever heard of this generational differences?
Yes, in many of the workshops I go to, in the Coach Federation, in the National Speakers, Global Speakers, every business leadership seminar, one of the hottest topics now, it seems to be, is generational differences and how to understand them.
Yeah,
so,
can you tell us exactly how you feel about it? And what do you think is the most challenging part of leading and managing multi-generational workplaces?
I think that the foundational idea of trying to understand people through putting them in categories, whether it's cross-cultural categories, formal, informal, traditional cultures, more innovative cultures, etc., or whether it's generational, dividing by the different generations, has its value in allowing people to have a structure that's generalized to be able to understand better something they may be unfamiliar with. The downside of that is that ultimately, through these structures, we might become more hardened in our mindset and think that everyone of that age group or everyone of that culture needs to fit into that model or does fit into that model. And we start to have another issue, which is assumption. Assumptions come from what we have been taught and what we think we believe. But when we drop from our minds of categorizing and analyzing and studying and learning and then trying to fit people into groupings, when we drop from the mind of the intellectual way of thinking that, we can drop into our hearts. And that's what I think is my main point about intergenerational communication, business, multicultural teams, intergenerational teams, everything. It could be best founded on the idea that each person has their own way. And there are these generalizations, but we need to, after we learn the structures, just like learning how to ski or learning how to swim or learning how to do yoga or meditate, you drop ultimately from the technique down into the rhythm. Cooking a soup, if you've done it 20 times, you're no longer looking at the recipe. Now you can just fit what's in the refrigerator, throw it into the pot, and make it creative each time. And that's how you see the best approach to intergenerational connections, teams, building, doing business across generations, communicating. It has to be a little bit of awareness about what to expect in modalities, but ultimately an individualized, in the moment, customized approach to just feeling it.